This is how I made my masks. I used Donna Hubert's. I cut whole piece out of my face fabric, 15 inches on the long side, 7.5 inches wide this way. And I took each square of inner lining and I did half of the face fabric. I went to the sewing machine and I serged my inner lining piece to my pre-washed fabric. All of it's pre-washed. Then I would have serged this side as well. Then I go back to the machine. I fold it in half, matching my edges. So that there's a fold on this side. Using my clips, I clip the two edges so that I can match my seams. I match all this up evenly. And then I go to the sewing machine and I stitch straight across here, or I serge it. If you have a serger, that's the best so it doesn't ravel. So when you get back from the machine, you'll have a piece that looks like this. So you'll have your pocket, which will be, the inner lining will be loose at the top, and this will be the fold. Your face fabric is doubled, and you have serged all the way around, plus both ends. So when I serge the second time, I serge these two sides closed at this point. Then I'll take my scissors, I'll trim off the corner so that it'll turn, but leave my stitching. Stitch off that corner, and then off that corner, making sure that I keep my stitching in place. Also, if my inner lining got just a little bit bigger, I'd use my scissors and trim that down, if I can find them. Making sure I don't cut my face fabric, because you want this to be even, because it goes up into the inside. So then I have my nose pieces that are a wire. This is a speaker wire. It's a 2 strands speaker wire, and it's got a plastic coating on it. So that's what we're using for the nose piece. Next step, I turn it inside out. Pushing out my corners so that everything is nice and pretty, because the square corners will make me crazy if it doesn't happen. So I may pull that out just a little bit. Make sure it's a nice crisp corner, because it's going to be on somebody's face. Okay, so now the inside has your inner lining to the face, which I make the front, and this to the back, and that's where I'll press. And then I'll take my face and I'll turn it inside and clip it to hold. Then I'll bring my back, and it's tricky on this, so you want to bring everything forward inside, and you want to make sure you cover the clipped end so that there's not a raw edge there. Then clip in this with that, and you're going to secure it with your clip or a pen, whatever you have. Hopefully you can see that. So I'm getting a nice clean edge so it's even. I'll do that to the other side. So I'm going to flip my seam toward my inner lining, flip it to the face, and then pull it, and that'll all give you a nice edge and nice and crisp. So face down. I'll even up my edges so that it's nice and pretty back here, and there's no hanging over, and this is the edge that's going to be at their chin, so you want it to look nice. Then I'll go back to my clip. Lost my measure. Here we go, sorry. So I come in 1.5 inches, and I put my clip in front of the 1.5 inches. So that I know I stitch from the edge to here and stop and back stitch. I go to the other side, do the same thing. I move my clip to where it's on the outside of 1.5 inches. So this is going to be my pocket for my filter, where I'm not going to stitch that closed at all so that they can get a filter in. But you want to have this so you don't have to measure it at the machine, was the purpose of that. I'll take my wire, I'll shove it in the top, in between the layers, and push it down to the front. And then I just kind of finger it flat in there because I wanted to tuck it right up into that seam. And then I'll use 2 fingers to kind of even it out. I believe this is 6, what did we cut these? We cut these 4.5 inches of wire. Then I'll clip it in place so that when I go to the machine, it's all in. I'll press all that down. Okay, so this is going to be the top by my nose. This is going to be the bottom with my opening. And then I'm going to take my template and set my pleats. Got it the right way. So it's a little bit smaller than the edge, so that if you wanted to do this at the machine, you could. I found it was too hard to do it that way. So you take and you just kind of eyeball it. Fold down each of these. Now I've been doing it by hand and it seems better. So you kind of want to put it here because you want 3 pleats, and I clip each one. I found that that was easier for me because there's a little bit of bulk when you use the inner lining. And I want them straight. And then you want that next pleat to lay below the first one so it's not so bulky at the machine. So that it's laid in there. And don't hit your arm on the iron because it will burn it. Okay. And then the last one is a little bit skinnier. It's a little bit harder to get in there. So if it's a little bit too tight, I may ease up the second pleat a little bit and make my little third one a little bit bigger. Once you do these a few times, then they kind of just fall into place. Just a little bit easier. The first few are hard until you kind of get a rhythm. And then it's still just a little bit too big. Start back up here. You don't want to get into this nose piece because you're going to stitch that in. So it's kind of like a fingertip to me. Yeah, there you go. So use my fingertip to kind of roll it. I was just doing it by feel earlier and it was coming together really easily, so. Okay, so you get the idea. So you do both sides. And then you're going to press it. And this is what you're going to end up with. So it's ready to go to the machine. So here I have my nose piece locked in right here. So I'm going to stitch it at the machine, backspace and stitch like two or three stitches. Then I'm going to run my foot tight up against the side of this nose piece, a straight stitch, and then back up here on the other end. Then I'll go down and stitch each of my sides so that all my pleats are locked into place. And at that point, you can do a couple of different things. Either you can use long strips of bias, and you could, the bias ties, they recommend 36 inches. Some people are putting them on the side. You could do it here, stitch them across, and then you'd be done. The healthcare workers that we're doing it for really prefer to do it across the bottom and across the top. So the ties are still 36 inches. But then you would stitch in the nose piece at the time you stitched in your bias. So you just come across, start stitching here. I would angle my cut over here and then top stitch it straight across. Make sure I have this all locked in and tight. I'd back stitch in here a couple of times just to make sure that it's nice and secure, because there's going to be a lot of pull on it. And then come on all the way across and then just keep going and top stitching. It's just a tie. And then the bottom would be the same way. And you wouldn't be able to put a pocket in. You'd have to close your pocket to do it this way, which is acceptable as well. Since this has an inner lining inside, the pocket isn't such an important factor because it gives you that extra layer that the filter would go. It's not as good as the filter would be if you were to get something like an air conditioning filter and that type of thing, but it still gives you a little bit of blockage between the two. So what I've done is gone ahead and done my lining ones, and then these have I only did 2 pleats because they were just so much more bulky. But this is how my pocket is stitched in for my nose piece. And then I'll stitch elastic like this. I'll top stitch it on the back on each end on this type, so that if you use elastic on it, so you could do that so that it's top stitched on the back when you do your side pleats. That's acceptable as well. It's pretty easy. Just want to make sure that you back stitch over that elastic on each end really, really well. So it would be and make sure you don't twist it. It's the tricky part. And I stick it into the side, not to the top, but to the side. So that when I top stitch my pleats, it's already in there. On the back by the face, you already have this, and that would complete your mask. So that's another way to do it. The ones we're doing for the healthcare workers are with the inner lining. 2 pieces of cotton drapery lining is what I had, and they liked it really well. And then I'm using the white twill tape, and this is how I've made them for them. So they can tie it. The ties are 36 inches. Of course, my square cut flat again is 7.5 inches wide, 15 inches long. The 7.5 is this side, which would be the nose. This has got a nose piece in the top, and that way it can be bent to keep any air coming up, and so that you don't fog your glasses, and it gives you a little bit more secure barrier for anything outside. And then this will fit, and of course it pulls open. So anyway, that's how I've made mine. Hope that helps. Also, the other ones that I've made are a different pattern. It's more of a rounded and it has a cutout. I've done a nose piece in it as well, just so that that's a little bit more secure. And I've used hair tie in here, and it actually moves. It's just a pocket. So it's stitched, I didn't stitch over, I just stitched the pocket this way so that you can move that around, or if that wears out, or if it's too big, you can thread a shoestring, you can thread all kinds of other things, or if you need to, you can use a paper clip and put them on the back of your head if that's better for you. But these have a pleat in the side. Let me see if I can find another one. So what I did is I cut 2 of the face and then 2 of the lining, and I did not do an inner lining in this one. Some I do, some I don't. When you do an inner lining, the flannel in it, it's so much heavier, and it's really hard to turn, kind of like this one. It was really, really bulky in my machine. So this one, I'll turn twice, and again, to turn it, I'll lay the elastic in and then turn it twice, and then I'll top stitch it, go across when I go down, and I'll make sure I have my loop in and insert my elastic over here before I close the edge, and make sure you get it in there deep enough that it holds it securely and doesn't come out over time with use. So I tuck it as tight as I can once I got that elastic width, and I just top stitch across that, and of course you want it to stay in. So then that kind of gives you the elastic edge too. So These are a nice fit. I've also started using a different pattern. So this is the style. It's Jackie Van Tobel's. It's on the Mask of America, JVT. This is her medium size. I found that the large size, way too big, even for my big guy. This was a large, and it's just way too big. So I wouldn't recommend using those unless you have a big guy. And we do have a couple of those guys down here that are our friends. So this is Jackie's pattern. And so you'll see there's a definite curve to one end, and then straight is the top. So, and I did not put a wire in this one. I'm not sure if I'm going to or not, but it kind of contours. This contours to the chin, the straight part contours to the nose. So when you're cutting out your patterns, you kind of want to think about that. So that's why I marked it, the up and the bottom for me. So the curved is on the bottom, which was kind of, it threw me a little bit, but that's how they're supposed to sit. Okay, and then this is the other pattern I've started using. It was on Pinterest. I haven't sewn any of these up yet, but they had 4 sizes, and this one happens to be teenage and women. These actually are the little girls. For the 4 to 6 or 7-year-old, this is their size. Same kind of style as this, only it's got a little bit better cutout for your eyes, and I think it'll be better for the kids, so it won't be up in their eyes so much. But it's got a pretty deep, these have a 1/4 inch seam allowance. This has a 1/2 inch seam allowance, so there's a little bit difference. And I only use the main fabric cutout, and I am going to do my lining the same size. When you cut your lining, you don't have it all the way, so it might be better if we cut out the lining a little bit less on the back side. So I just realized that. As I say, I haven't tried these yet, but that's the ones I'm doing. Okay.